Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast, My Hero Academia edition. Today we have a very special My Hero Academia episode. Typically we do every 4 episodes where we talk about My Hero. So we will be doing our typical My Hero ones in 2 weeks actually, where we review episodes 4 through 8. Today we have a My Hero Academia case study on the Todoroki family. You've heard us have some mini rants about them in our past My Hero things, so we decided to dedicate a whole episode to the Todoroki family, and we have our My Hero enthusiast, Andrea, with us. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. And like I told the listeners out there, we've had some mini rants about the Todoroki family on our previous podcast, and I've had some deep dives, but haven't had to really get a deep dive. So today, we're just going to dedicate a whole episode to the Todoroki family dynamic, how it applies to like real life and what happens in real life. And yeah, just talk about the Todoroki family. So before we get started, we should tell the people who the Todoroki family is, like their real names. So, Andrea, do you got some names for these people? We know who Shoto is.
We do, Mr. Half Hot, Half Cold, according to Bakugo. So Endeavor's real name is Enji. Mm-hmm. His wife's name is Rei. Mm-hmm. And then Shoto has 3 other siblings. The eldest and his older sister, her name is Fuyumi. His older brother, Natsuo, who typically is referred to as Natsu. Mm-hmm. And then he has a deceased brother named Toya. Mm-hmm. And then Shoto is the youngest of the siblings.
So the reason we wanted to talk about the Todoroki family is because as of season 5, end of season 4 really, Endeavor officially became the number 1 hero in Japan and the world due to All Might's retirement. And we've been posing the question of, is Endeavor really a number 1 hero material due to his backstory and the things that he's done in his past that aren't known to the public? But if they were known to the public, would he still be ranked number 1 hero? Would he even be a hero? Would he be in jail? Those are normal questions that we've talked about almost every day, how this dude has done some things in his past. And for the people who don't know, we're going to talk about some of that stuff right now. So Andrea, Endeavor, Enji, he's married to his wife, Rei. And from what we've seen, heard, that relationship's not the greatest.
Definitely not healthy. We will say that. Basically, when we're introduced to Shoto Todoroki to start the show, you basically, he has the burn on one half of his face. We learn early on that burn came from his mother burning him with boiling water that it's assumed she was making tea with when he caught her on the phone making comments to either a friend or a family member that Shoto seems to be looking more like his father, which is a bit, you get the sense that it's a trauma response and it's triggering for her baby to look so much like Endeavor. Mm-hmm. And then realizing she was heard and it's assumed that she has a bit of a psychological breakdown and then burns him. So Shoto's dealing with a lot of that to start, and he refuses to use his fire side to spite his father. We also learn that essentially about a practice in the My Hero Academia universe, quirk marriages, where people will seek partnerships, relationships with people with certain quirks to create an ideal quirk-wielding child. And we learn about this from Shoto, who discloses that was the entire purpose of his parents' relationship, as we were told in season 1. So that in itself kind of is a very good swath of just like the amount of depth and trauma and toxicity that's going on in the household between the parental relationships, the sibling relationships, because Shoto kind of made it seem like he was an only child for a little while because we didn't really see his siblings. They were kind of referenced as being failures by his dad in a flashback scene where he's pulling Shoto along to be trained, but there's no engagement, which was a little odd. However, again, it in more depth kind of comes out that, Shoto was the only one that had half and half, that had that perfect quirk that Enji was looking for to be able to beat All Might, for somebody to finally take over. And if it wasn't going to be Enji, it was going to be Enji's son.
Yeah, that's right where I wanted to do, because like the backstory with Endeavor even wanting to get married and have kids, is like he wanted to be the strongest hero ever. And he, to his credit, he rose up the ranks really quick. I think he was the number 2 by 2020 to 23, that range. And obviously the number 1 hero at that time was All Might. So his only goal was to try and surpass All Might. But as the years and years went through, he realized no matter how strong he got, because I think he also has like a lot of most cases solved, whatever. He was never going to be All Might. Like that wall, he was never going to climb it. It just became way too high. So just from a psychological thing, not to really give him like benefit of doubt, but if you're a person and for the rest of your life, as long as that person's still alive, you're always going to be number 2. There's no amount of weights you can lift. There's no amount of cases you can solve. There's nothing you can do, and you will never beat that person. And he slowly started to realize that, which might have caused his own mental snap, because we don't know him.
We don't know his backstory as a child, his family dynamics. We don't know any of that information. That may be in the manga. I don't know. But I'm going off of what I know between seasons 1 and 5. But at this time, we don't know much about Enji's childhood upbringing. And it does put a lot of psychological stress on someone who, that was their entire goal. That was their dream. That is their drive. That is their reason for being. But that still doesn't. No,
it doesn't affect any of the stuff that he said. But just think of it like this: if he was the number 2 hero since he was 23 before the events of the show, and currently they have him right now at 46. So for 20 something years, because All Might just recently retired, so we won't even say he's retired for a year. So over 20 years, you are number 2 to one person that you can never get over. And each year, no matter what you do, like for 20 years, 365 days for 20, that's a lot of mental snappage. And then the fact that he realized he couldn't beat him, so he tries to do the next best thing, which you talked about marrying like someone with the quirk to balance out his weaknesses of his like fire quirk. And he's had 4, because Shoto was the youngest, 4 kids. And he was the only one who was able, Shoto, to have the half hot, half cold. And the fact that he didn't marry a woman, first, he didn't marry her out of love. He literally like maybe looked on My Hero Academia, Tinder, or Buzz, whatever the hell dating apps are. It's like, I'm only interested in ice quirk girls. Found this one, was literally...
I do believe with this situation, though, I think it was assumed that he paid off her family.
Yeah, paid off the family. So maybe he looked on BuzzFeed, like willing to pay for
Craigslist,
willing to pay for ice woman. And of course, if you're a poor family, why wouldn't you give your? Not nice, but why wouldn't you give your daughter to the number 2 ranked hero for the past 20 something years? So you're going to be making money off of his stuff, and we don't know if he was still taking care of him post that. But then if you just think of the 4 kids and like, especially when you're married, like the act of being intimate, like trying to have kids is supposed to be like a loving thing. Endeavor was treating it like a job. Like, I'm going to get you pregnant. You're going to have this kid. Better be half and half, or we're going to try again. So 3 times kept going. All of them were failures until Shoto. And like you talked about Shoto being an only child, he might as well have been, because like you talked about the scene of Endeavor pulling him away. Like, those kids don't matter. they suck. You're the only one. And then he was like ruthless during the trainings, like, because that All Might stuff really affected him, because like it was just like, I have to have something in my family better than All Might or my existence suck. But for those other kids, just thinking that you're trying to get love from your dad, and he's like, because of the X and Y chromosomes not mixing, you're trash, which that's not a good thing. So then with Endeavor 2, also he did abuse all the kids.
Yep.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, yeah, mental, physically, emotionally. He abused his wife. That was stated, that he hit her in front of Shoto, and then the wife, who was a caring woman. And you already brought this up too, that if you look in your kid's eyes and you see your abuser's eyes, which led to the kettle thing, which makes Shoto hate his dad even more.
Right.
Like, you've seen it, like, how that can do a big effect on someone psychologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, every day, just looking at the eyes of 3 kids, and they look like your dad. Not cool.
And brought up kind of, the pressure that Angie was under from his goal of being number one, or somehow making somebody to be number one over All Might. And part of what an abuser in an intimate partner violence situation is after and hones in on is control.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, having this quirk marriage, creating the child with the, quote, perfect quirk, is his way of controlling what he cannot control in his own life.
Mm-hmm.
And, physically abusing your children to produce the outcome that you want, to make them fear you, to make sure that they do as you want, as you say, is a control thing. Mm-hmm. And so it just goes to a lot of, even with the emotional, just making sure that everything is how he wants it, and he does not consider, or had not considered, anyone's feelings but his own, at least from what we have seen so far.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I just had to check on the thing. Endeavor reached number 2 by the age of 20. So 26 years was number 2 behind one person who he could not get over, and that caused all these events. And even when All Might retired, Endeavor was initially mad because the only reason he got the number 1 spot is because of retirement. He wasn't stronger than him. He didn't beat the top bad guy. Like, he only got it because of retirement, which also fueled the anger more and more. And then when you go to like season 4, 5 Endeavor, you start to see him trying to change, which honestly just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I wish there was a little bit more warm up to it, because it
kind of felt forced.
A little, I will say that. The one thing I just want to say is that, like, part of being in an intimate partner violence relationship, the victim a lot of times has the hope that the abuser will change. And while that can happen, it has to come from the abuser actually making changes and wanting that change. Because if you think about it from a bit of a warped sense, you have all the control. You control everything. Everything is as you want it. Mm-hmm. What is going to motivate you to change that, to give up that control? And so in this situation with Engie, I'm not really sure what that trigger is, other than maybe, Shoto finally, does use the fire quirk, but then makes it very clear to him that it's like, I have nothing for you. I can respect you as a hero, but you are not a dad to me. I do not see you that way.
And then also with Endeavor, just thinking about like the situation that, because they live, we talked about, like, obviously they're in Japan, but it's more of like a Japanese westernized like anime. And to think that he had his wife, the 3-4 kids, and it seemed like they lived in like a gated estate, just
A large one.
A large one, just shouting out another anime that we just recently just watched, Fruit Basket, the Soma Estate.
Yeah.
To think that he would be able to abuse his wife and 4 kids and no one else knows. So it's like he was one of those things that he's like, well, if you tell someone that this is happening, it's going to get worse. Even when the girl, like when his wife went to the hospital.
In a psych ward.
In a psych ward, I mean, they got us like, so what happened? Oh, like, she threw stuff on my pride and joy son, but you didn't tell the doctor as well. What led to this was that I was beating the heck out of her and mentally abusing all of them. Like, just to think that nobody else knew this was all going on for 20-something years is crazy.
Right. And it begs the other question is like, okay, so we have these heroes. Nobody knows about this, but I mean, obviously this might be a little bit too much world expanding, but it begs the question, like, is there such a thing as children's services? Because, like, Aerie, like, hello, she oh my gosh, if ever children needed children's services, it's Todoroki children and Aerie. Like, oh my goodness. Well, obviously more potentially if we get more backstories, but
But Aerie's one because most people didn't know that her gramps was down because the grandpa was actually a good
caretaker.
Grandpa,
yep.
Like he's like, oh yeah, my kid abandoned the granddaughter. I'm not gonna have that. And then like he was against Overhaul's plan, and then Overhaul put him to sleep. So that was the thing with that. But the Todorokis, you had 4 of them, and I'm assuming the oldest daughter, Fuyumi, she went. I don't know if she went to college if that was confirmed, but Natsu, like at the end of season 4, was coming back from college. So it's like just for them to live their whole lives, basically worthless, go to college, and then come back, and Fuyumi's back in the house, and Natsu was back from college, and then you've seen the interactions where maybe because she's the oldest, she's the first trying to forgive her dad, which I don't know where that's coming from, because if you're the oldest, that means there was kids after you. You're the first one treated like trash. So I don't know why she was the first to try and forgive him. What do you think?
So I feel like in a lot of family studies, children kind of fall into these different roles, and especially in like multiple sibling sets, she is the oldest, so she would have been witness to the abuse the longest, whether or not she got it quote unquote the worst. I'm not saying that, but she was there to experience it, witness it the longest. There's also kind of that wonder if her gender comes into play a little bit with
she is the only girl. That's true.
Also the first one kind of there for the struggles between mom and dad, trying to be the peacemaker. And so in the situation where, you know, Anji's coming back from his big fight with the Nomu, I'm wondering if not necessarily that she's forgiving him to forgive him, but more so that keep the peace of, oh, hey, he's trying to make this shift. Let's try to make this work, instead of because she very much seems to me like the people pleaser, pacifier, peacemaker, because she doesn't want to create waves. And that could be a response in the sense of when she made any sort of waves as a child, it was a big problem. So it could also be a result of that. Plus, then you also have, so she's the peacemaker. Then you have Natsu, who's the, he just cannonballed right into that water and be like, no, I'm not having this, which is a totally valid response. It's just, that's the role that he's playing. And Shoto, much to the balance of his quirk, ironically, is kind of like, he's got a foot in both, in the sense of not necessarily a peacemaker, but he acknowledges that I can respect you as a hero, but as like a person, as a father, you're trash.
Yeah, and that's season 5 Shoto, because obviously we don't, because Shoto's the main Todoroki in that family that we follow, but he's had interactions, obviously, which is a good thing, going to school. Like, if he was private schooled, he never would have met his classmates in Class 1A. He never would have had those social interactions. He never would have had that fight with Midoriya. And I wanted to go back to Fuyumi, because the peacemaker and all that, how much of that was, though, because you've seen this and I've seen this, is that she felt like she had to do that because not only was she the oldest, but she was the oldest girl and the mom was out. So she had to take that motherly role with her siblings and in an awkward way with her dad because she's the one trying to bring the family together because in season 5 the mom's still at the psych ward, so she's like the mom of the house. So how much of that plays into effect, because that happens a lot in real life.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a very good point. I'm actually kind of surprised I forgot about that aspect, but no, for sure, because I mean, it is kind of assumed that the maternal figure, the maternal energy in a home is supposed to help stabilize. And, you know, a lot of times, even if it's not necessarily like, you know, a bad parental relationship, maybe, you know, it's a single parent household, somebody died. There's always that assumption of like, you know, it's the oldest son. Well, now you're the man of the house. Or even if there is just a son in the house, well, now you're the man of the house.
I want to take that even a step further with single parent household. In this case, how's it? I don't even know if it's single parent. It might be no parent. Because if Endeavor was really gone doing all the cases and stuff, how many times was it for Yumi doing all the stuff at the house, taking her brothers to school when they were like younger? And Endeavor would only show up, train Shoto, leave. Like, we don't, like, just thinking how he was trying to pass All Might and he was never home. Like, she could have been the primary caretaker of the entire house.
That's a good point, too. That is a very good point.
And then Natsu, who outside of Shoto is my favorite Todoroki, because the only time you saw him was the end of season 4, where he's like, I'm not, like you just said, I'm not going for this. Like, I'm not going to pretend like everything's okay, because we've seen in these situations with abusive households, some kids pretend it's all right, like it's the norm, and Natsu's like, no, it's not. Like, you abuse mom, you abused all of us. I didn't even know my brother's favorite stuff was this, because we basically grew up without him because you took him. Like, he was just letting, like, it's the truth.
It is.
And Shoto, like you said, he's half in, half out, like the quirk. But I really feel like that's because we've seen literally 5 seasons of him. Like, if that family meeting in season 5 happened in season 1 or 2, I don't think
no.
I don't think he'd be in.
He would not have come to that house. No. He would not have been there for Enji's return home after the big fight, where honestly there was a question of whether he was going to survive. There was the kind of emotional impact of Todoroki watching that, or excuse me, Shoto watching that fight. And honestly, I feel like that emotional reaction would have been a little different if it happened in season 1. However, that emotional reaction is also a hallmark of children that come from, you know, abusive, problematic, toxic households. Even though they are abuser, they are, you know, hurting the people they care about, they're also still dad. They're also still mom. So there's girlfriend. The complicated web of emotions that is involved in these situations is just so intense, and it's so sad, because a lot of times with My Hero and with a lot of anime, honestly, when they reach that high school age, it's kind of assumed that they're more adult than they are. And it's just thinking about how, you know, he's coming in as like a freshman, he's about 14 years old, and he's got a hatred for his dad. And you know what? Very, very what's the word I'm looking for? Justified response. It's not that he's unjustified in hating his dad. It's just that hatred was hindering his ability to, you know, reach his full potential. Right. And again, if he had, like you said, hadn't gone to UA, he wouldn't have met Deku, who was able to help him kind of process through a lot of that and realize that hatred, that spite, wasn't serving him the way he thought it would, to spite his father. Because it appeared like, Enji was annoyed that Shoto wasn't using his fire quirk. Especially
season 2 during the
sports festival.
Right.
Yeah. But it wasn't rising to the level of kind of impact that Shoto was really like looking for, because he's really trying to, you know, metaphorically flip the bird at his dad to get, you know, the message across that I hate you, and his dad's just seeing it as teenage rebellion.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, you hit that nail on the head earlier with that. I mean, you could be with someone who is so crappy, like your parents, or flip side, this was like significant others. And if, like when you talked about, that was the first time we really saw like Shoto and his like family like panicking. They thought his dad was going to die. And like, if his friends knew like the backstory, like obviously they just see Endeavor as the new number one hero, not Endeavor like the dad who was Pooh. And
only
like,
Deku does, because Deku got that little glimpse. I don't believe he knows full depth.
No, but it's just like, and you ask this in real life, like, why do you care if your ex was like abusive or something, or like your dad, or like where we work, or your dad's like, well, still mine. I mean, if something happened and they died, it's still your dad, and you have to like respect those things. And I wanted to talk about, like, you brought up the high school thing, that yeah, they're like 14, 15, but to be honest, I've come to a point where I just equate when anime says they're 14, 15 in high school, I just think they're like 20, they're 20 to 30. Like they're in that fresh out of college, because they're like acting in their 20s, trying to find life. Like, and in some cultures, high school is like the last stop unless you're super smart and go to university. But after high school is when you get a job, and to our knowledge, there's no My Hero College. So after high school,
that would be so cool, though.
That would be super. To our knowledge, there's no My Hero College. So it's after high school, you're a professional hero. And I know when I tried to look up All Might's history, because he's the only person we can really look up. Like after he left UA, he went to America,
right?
And
he just did more hero stuff.
Yeah, hence all the American moves. But just to think about like Shoto, who got into school, obviously, because of recommendations. That is a number 2 hero. Was quiet, all that stuff, and just relating that to real life and like children. You wouldn't know anything is going on if, like, for someone who we think he's going to end up with, Momo. Like, if seeing him, like, oh my gosh, his life's perfect. He's one of the top students in the class. His dad is the number 2 hero. He's one of the smart, like, he's one of the complete packages. There has to be nothing wrong with his life. And that happens a lot in the real world, that unless you like really have a deep dive with someone, like you see the outside and you think it's perfect, and then like you actually talk to them, like, oh, this person's life is terrible. And like, you just think that like it's a whole different thing. And we see that every day. And anyone who works in those type of fields see that. So it's crazy. And like, what would, like, is Eraserhead a mandated reporter? Like,
I know, right? Oh my gosh,
if he ever found out, like, is there like a hero? Oh, I guess there is a hero licensing board. Like, would you have to tell, like, real life implications? We're putting real life into My Hero. Would you have to tell, it's like, hey, the number, well, at that time he was number 2 when he started, but now number 1 hero. So he was a child abuser and a one woman abuser. I mean, just to put it in context, that's what he was. So like,
I mean, yeah, he would have. I mean, if he had gotten caught, I mean, he'd potentially, depending on what exactly real life by American standards. I don't even want to say American. Excuse me, Ohio standards. What the police see, what injuries are present. Like, he could very easily catch assault, domestic violence charges very easily. Those are still only misdemeanors, which is a whole nother discussion. But
that's reputation.
Right. And he already is not like a beloved hero.
No,
he's respected because he gets the job done.
No.
But that was part of his reason for not being able to catch All Might, is All Might was a symbol. He was approachable. He was charming. He was funny. Engie is not.
Cool. I don't even want to push it a step further with that, because we talked about if there was any like children's service stuff in My Hero. I mean, because we're talking about as high as you can go, family, all that. Would they even do anything? Would they even investigate? Like, would they even like consider like, oh, it's Endeavor? Like, why is the number 2 hero? He's a number 2 hero. There should be nothing wrong with his family. We're just gonna blow this off. Like, would they even look into it? Because I mean, we've learned if you have enough money, you can get off with anything. And if you have enough notoriety, so it's like, if they want to come like Eraserhead's like, hey, there's things going on at the house? No. door closed. That's it. It's Endeavor. What are you gonna? There's no, like, how would that work?
I don't know, because I honestly have thought about this, taking it like real world, like all of those like really like custody battles between celebrities. Like they live in a real county.
They do.
They you know, child abuse, you know, occurs about the same across socioeconomic status, although it's, you know, reported on the lower end more so than the high end. But what about those calls that they're going to get on Tom Cruise or like Kim Kardashian,
right now,
like
Kanye West?
Like perfect example is, you know, depending on, there was a fight on Keeping Up with the Kardashians between the sisters. It was Kourtney and Kim got into a fist fight and there was bleeding involved at one point. We could have easily screened that in as domestic violence in the home because the children are present, might have been, I don't know, present in the house. So it's like, how does that work? I can't even imagine as a social worker walking up to this giant mansion being like, so we've got this concern for like, I can't fathom how that actually would play out because
right. No, that'd be wild, especially now in an anime context, because you never really see kids get taken from their parents, not like that by the law. You see some villain maybe snatch them up, or the old anime trope where the main character leaves the family to go train with some old man. And
oh god,
that signature thing. But it's just like thinking of all those different things, and like obviously in the season 5 opening, you see like a conversation between Midoriya and Shoto, maybe showing their growing friendship, and obviously during the overhaul arc where Shoto was not involved, but seeing Midoriya and then like an Ida seeing Midoriya super sad and thinking about the moments they shared together with Stain and the Hero Festival is like, that's the one person he could potentially confide to. But Midoriya can't relate to any of the family stuff because he's always had well, we don't know about that, but he's always had a loving mother, and he's already, and Midoriya's already had from a family thing everything Shoto hasn't, a loving mom, and now like this mentor, greatest hero of all time, All Might. He has the relationship with Gran Torino, someone who cares for him and has trained him. Even though it was super rocky at the beginning, he started to get the relationship with Night Eye. Like, so every adult person that he has met, he has started, and he has a relationship also with their teacher, with the Eraserhead, because the Eraserhead in season 4 is like, hey, trouble kid, I know what you're gonna do. Let's do this by the book. I'll be watching over you. They almost have like the Kakashi Naruto relationship, referencing to like Naruto, but it's like, but Shoto on the other hand, the only parents that, because he's been locked with his dad, if he couldn't shoot the fire, he got the stick. If he didn't shoot the ice at the wrong time, he got the stick. So you woke up, you got beat down in training, went to sleep, repeat for 14 to 15 years. We talked about Endeavor's psyche, about being number 2 for 26. Shoto's from 0 to 15, just getting beat down, basically not knowing anything about your siblings. One died when you were whatever, and you're like, oh, well, never got to know him, so.
And then your mom, from what I understand, is he looks to his mother as a very loving figure, and essentially, you know, like you said earlier, that she had the moment where she snapped and burned him, and he attributes that to, you know, his dad's abuse towards her, which also, from what we understand, came about a little bit as trying to be protective of them. And so Angie saw that as getting in his way, again, with the control.
You want to talk about real world? If someone would have found out that she threw the stuff on him, like if that's how he got, and he told you, like at that time, then Endeavor might have killed her, because in real world they would have potentially lost his one thing.
Yep.
Like that.
that could, I mean, talk about safety planning, potential getting custody of the kid from, and it's just so, and it just goes to show that like in the real world with any sort of like child abuse, emotional abuse, even if it doesn't rise to the, you know, state level definition of abuse, it just leaves, you know, not to be cliche, but the metaphorical scars, if not physical. And if you don't dig deep enough, if somebody isn't forthcoming to be able to share and know, we potentially in this hypothetical situation, mom would have been the one, you're the safety threat to your child because you did this.
You did this.
But if nobody's saying anything about, what precipitated all of this, could very well be ignoring kind of the center of this toxic universe. And it becomes a totally different narrative. And of course, every story has more than one side. But, and touching on your point about, Todoroki not having all of those additional, adult supports, one of the primary, I don't want to say primary, one of the key kind of highlighted impacts of adverse childhood experiences is difficulty attaching and forming relationships. And although Shoto has been, I know, has been seen as a pleasant character. He's not overly friendly.
No.
He's not mean. He's just, I don't want to say he's kind of there because he's more involved than that, but it's like he keeps a safe distance from everybody. He's only really shown that he's gotten particularly close with Deku, and he seems to have a very hyper awareness of Momo's abilities, and he probably has that for all of the characters because that's also, survival instinct is judging who can be trusted, keeping a safe distance, hyper analyzing, being hyper vigilant. We could really just go on forever.
So I want to go to the public thing because obviously season 4 ended with him. It was literally called His Start. That was the title of the thing. And when you watch it, obviously at the end, Prominence Flash, he finally says plus ultra and does his best move. You want to talk about the difference between home life and work life. Everyone thinks he's just this big badass because he did that, did the fist in the air. Nobody knows about the stuff at home. And it's crazy because that's the things that people see at work or all that stuff, with the fields we do, go to a super rich house and you're there because this Fortune 500 company dad, CEO was out there beating his wife or beating his kids, and people or both, and they're just at work. He's Endeavor, the second, well, now the greatest person in the world, and it's and you also saw in the fandom how everyone's just oh my gosh, that was great, Endeavor's the greatest, blah blah blah, and then people are you guys forget that he beats his wife and he beat his kids, so that's the thing too with abusers and stuff like that. One great thing just sometimes instantly wipes all the bad out of some people's minds. What do you think of that?
I feel I don't want to say it's unfair, but that's also the best word I can come up with right now for it, in the sense of, no single person is wholly bad or wholly good. So judging on one instance in general is always going to be, misguided. But this is obviously a pattern of behavior, and to really just hammer it in with control, you have that, Fortune 500 CEO, you have the celebrity, you have the community leader, who in the public presents as, a totally, I don't want to say normal, because it's not unnormal for this to happen, unfortunately, but putting on that face of that they are calm, cool, collected, they don't fly off the handle, they don't have
Tiger Woods, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly, named recent ones who've had things come out of them, but hey, that perfect life that everyone loved them until something came to light. And
with batterers specifically, though, that's also goes back to the sense of control, because if battering your significant other, abusing your children was really about rage, you would see uncontrolled rage in all situations that make somebody angry.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that somebody can rein it in public, but then go home in private
Mm-hmm.
to issue that control really shows that it's not an anger issue. It's a control issue where they know at home they get away with it, but they know in public that doesn't stand.
Yeah, and I agree, because past, especially like 10 years, I've just come with the saying, when things happen with like celebrities or sports people about like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they did such and such, can't believe they cheated on such and such, blah, 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 this and this. My saying now is just like, look, and this is in real life too, of normal people like us, you don't know what anyone does unless you've been to that person's home. Like,
and even then, you don't know until you live with them.
Until you live with them, true. I stopped at seeing like their home, because technically their home is their safe space, so they can take off the shackles, and if they want to cheat on whoever or beat on whoever, they can in their home, and then outside they have to switch the image up, like, because you don't know what anyone does until they go home, and like, unless you live with them. And that's why I don't get surprised with stuff, because I don't know what they did at home, because I don't live with them. So with the Endeavor stuff, and now he's the number one, he's trying to make amends. It seems like the women in the Todoroki family are a lot more forgiving than the boys, which I don't know if that's, sometimes women do, some do forgive a lot quicker than others, because like the mom was like, Ray, she was just like, oh, he's trying. And they showed her a picture. I was like, I didn't know one flower can rectify almost 3 decades of abuse. I didn't know that. And anyone listening, please don't try that with your significant others. One flower, you shouldn't be doing it anyway, and one flower doesn't cut it at all.
Honestly, I really felt like the writers had, or the author even, I don't know if the anime is following the manga strictly, but there was an opportunity to really kind of not have that, before, kind of cyclical of like, okay, so he's trying, it'll be different this time, because we see that a lot in media, and I feel like it fuels that idea, and it keeps people in that believing that, oh, I can help them change, that, oh, they're trying. But in a lot of interpersonal violence relationships, it's cyclical. There's the incident, and then there's a bit of a forgiveness period, and then a honeymoon period where you're thinking, oh, like, things have changed, they've changed, this is going great, and then there's another incident of some sort, and not always necessarily physical. There's a lot of aspects of abusive relationships that involve interpersonal violence, where it's just about controlling people's choices, isolating them, and never having to actually lay a hand on them to make them afraid, even just making verbal threats and making them feel completely isolated and alone. I understand that, everybody is different and would approach the situation differently. The fact that they're married probably also plays into it. I'm not sure Japanese marital values, if like divorce is as common as here. I don't quite know that, but it's one of those things where it's like, I do personally wish they would have given us more material to make it seem like she's not so quick to believe that, things are on the upswing to stay that way.
Yeah. And I mean, Dodo said it best. If you're hero you're all right, you're cool, you're number one. Parent you, not so good. So I am going to throw a crazy question at you, because it's not really crazy, because we've brought this up actually a couple of times. So at the beginning of season 4, reporter dude was trying to find out All Might's successor,
right?
Because it's freaking anime. He found out in 20 minutes,
right? Plus, it was a recap episode,
and it was a recap episode. Right. So my question is, if you were reporter dude, so now reporter girl, and you were tasked with finding out about the Todoroki drama, would you, because he found out, so I'm assuming you'd find out, would you unleash that to the public? Because technically, time frame wise, that'd be right before the hero ranking. And my second question to that is, if you said yes, what do you think that would do to the hero world?
Oh, wow. So, I mean, as a reporter, you don't have, the ethical dilemma of, like, being a mandated reporter. You're just an average Joe citizen. Should everybody, hear or see something like that, have knowledge of something like that, and immediately report it to the powers that be that are applicable? Absolutely.
But he's more TMZ, so...
Right, but even... This is why I couldn't be a journalist. I could not... I personally feel like releasing that information to the public without first disclosing that information to, like, the police or their version of children's services, like, whatever. And just releasing it to the mass media to, like, have the story of, the decade, century, whatever it would be, is it Pulitzer Prize? Whatever.
It probably would. I mean, I guess he would do it as people do it, like, whistleblower. He'd be the whistleblower. Right.
And so, for me personally, and this just, probably goes to my values, I would want to be that whistleblower to the appropriate places first. And then if nothing is getting done, because a lot of times that's what investigative journalists do, is there's an issue going on and people have been trying to get that information out there, but for some reason it's just not. And so they get it out to the public. I believe it was the Boston Globe, the newspaper that broke on the Catholic Church scandal.
Yeah.
Like, there was information out there and it had been reported, but it, was getting stuffed. And then, so the media was the one to crack it wide open. So for me, I would hand that over to appropriate places first. However, the thing about that is those all can work in the background. And as a journalist, since you're not a mandated reporter, you wouldn't get notified what the outcome is or what exactly is happening. So unless, all of a sudden Endeavor is getting arrested and then the, like, news cycles go on about it, like, how are you gonna know anything's come of it? So, but what the impact that would have on the hero world, even after the, like, new rankings, it just diminishes the public's trust in heroes that much further, because there's already an uneasy air from the void left by All Might, who is a symbol of peace, justice. He's going to protect, would never fail. And so there's already that sense of uneasiness, and because of that absence, that vacuum being created, there's been a surge of villains. So it would just further kind of, you're already... The Hero Society is already taken one for the team, and it's just, it would be a sucker kick to the mouth while you're already on the ground, just like... But at the same time, unfortunately, when we have, like, bringing up the, celebrities and athletes, it's the hero halo effect. You have these people that you look up to, so you think they cannot have any faults, or the faults that they have are just so minor. It would, bring to the forefront the fact that, heroes are people too, and they're not perfect. And so it could, if there's not already an avenue of, you mentioned, like, the licensing board, going to the licensing board with concerns to be like, hey, yeah, this person is doing good work for the public, but this is what's going on. Like, no, we cannot let this stand. So in that sense, if it doesn't already exist, with Endeavor, if that came out, it might potentially need to come about that way. And then you also open up the avenue of, like, okay, who gets to make these reports? Because any little old Joe Schmo villain criminal could just be making wanton accusations for heroes, since now we're going around telling everybody's hero names. Like, yeah.
So I'll go backwards since you were just talking about the hero thing. I'll make it quick. So the hero thing, it would confirm Shigaraki and Stain and Overhaul that the thing is a sham, because all the people that you look up, well, first Stain, he said the only true hero is All Might, because All Might's not looking for merchandise. He's not, like, he's doing it because it's right. Everyone else was looking for notoriety. Endeavor. Never. So that would be confirmed. Overall, Shigaraki, that the hero thing's a scam. All these people are bad anyway. Your number one hero is a wife beater. That's not a good ring on the Daily Gazette of UA.
Right.
So that'd be bad. So, and then if it's brought up, just thinking of normal stuff, you have to say if it's true or not. There are going to have to be some things brought up. So, and then on the first thing, if it was me, I think I'll go the same path as you, but depending on, like, especially anime and comics, the cops are technically worthless.
Yeah,
so
real.
That might get swept under the rug, so then you might have to take matters into your own hands. But I think I would give some courtesy and be like, hey, I know this stuff happened. Like, you can either address it yourself, get ahead of it, like, do your first press thing as a number one hero, get ahead of it, talk about your mistakes, but if something happens, like, yeah, then I would do the same thing you did. But if I knew the cops were trash, I'd just be like, look, I mean, the world's got to know, and then have them answer for it, and then that can be the true healing of that. So, Andrea, anything else you want to say about the Todoroki family? This was a very fun case study to do.
It's so, I feel bad for saying it, but I love the Todoroki family because they are very relatable in, you know, the sad as well as, you know, potential hopeful aspects, in the sense of, you know, the kids with the quote unquote baggage do seem to be doing well enough for themselves. So it doesn't feed into the narrative of you have trash childhood, you're going to be a trash adult, quote unquote, or repeat the same pattern, that type of thing. Does that happen? Yes, but it's not a hard and fast rule. Children are resilient. People are resilient. And then I just always have a soft spot for characters who have dealt with some heavier stuff, because, I mean, it's just, my heart goes out to them and just want them to be happy.
No, I understand. Yeah, it does relate to real world stuff. And I mean, it's good. I mean, obviously the people who love anime have a reason they love anime, because it gives them an escape, and they see sometimes parallels to what an anime character is going through in their life to what they're going through and what the Todorokis are going through. There's millions of families in America, let alone across the world, who are gaining that thing. Not necessarily the abuse part, but the part that one parent wants this child to succeed no matter what, to surpass them, and it puts insurmountable pressure on that child. If that child messes up, they feel the weight. Like, that's as normal as it comes on the world. So, but with that being said, definitely want to thank you for being on. I know we'll be back in 2 weeks reviewing 4 through 8. Definitely want to try and put these little case studies in the mix when we don't have any of the episodes. I don't know who we do next, but it'd be super cool. But with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. You guys take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.